Hello everyone, welcome to Steven Shinder Reviews in video form, and this time I'm talking about the new film Joker Folie Deux. I think I pronounced that correctly, or maybe not, I don't know. I've been sitting on this one for a few days. A friend of mine requested that I do a review of it. I'm going to try to be vague and avoid spoiling, but if I do go into spoilers, it'll be at the very end and there will be a warning. This is the most Elseworlds that any DC film arguably has gotten. This is an alternate reality. It's like maybe even like real worlds, like those real worlds DC comics where it feels like the real world, and there are a couple characters who feel like or are similar to a couple of these characters. Harvey Dent doesn't really stand out. He kind of feels like just some normal lawyer guy, which he doesn't need to feel like comic book Harvey Dent because this is an Elseworlds story. And so going into this sequel, there was a question of whether or not it needed a sequel. And look, when I talk about these Joker films, I'm not defending anything and I'm not saying you absolutely need to see this new one. So I'm just sharing my thoughts and what I got out of this particular viewing. So the first film, is hailed as a work of art, although there were comparisons to other films, and it raised concerns that maybe it could inspire people to become more violent and perhaps use mental illness as as an excuse, something to weaponize, as an excuse for their actions. So something that I did like about the film though was the ambiguity of what's the future after this movie, after the events of this film, the first Joker film. Is this someone who perhaps inspires the Joker who will eventually fight Batman, in this particular universe? Because that's sort of the vibe that I got, and I kind of liked that we didn't get concrete answers. It ended with Arthur Fleck institutionalized, if I remember correctly, and yet people seemed to think that this new one would be about Arthur Fleck, rising to become the clown prince of crime that we know so much from the Batman mythology. And I do remember seeing one trailer, and it never really made me imagine that that would be the case with this new film. Um, and I feel like what happens in the film doesn't really go against what I got out of the ending of the first one. And look, I'm not saying that you shouldn't try to imagine what happens after a film ends, but I'm just saying that I didn't really imagine anything. Like, I didn't really speculate, like, what is the world of this Joker, this Gotham, like, way, way, way after the film. I might have had, like, very brief thoughts here and there, but nothing, like, really substantial. It just, it's so I don't know. Like when going into the film, I sort of raised an eyebrow about the, going into the second film, about the negative reception, all the low scores. And since then, I've seen a couple online places say this is the worst film of the year. And having seen the film, I feel like I've seen worse from this year. Like there's a bunch of films I would rate below this one, and it did make me think. And going into it, I knew that it would be somewhat of a musical, so I was kind of surprised that the musical elements were subdued, and so I was a little surprised how long it took for the film to actually delve into musical territory, and the musical numbers didn't feel as overt and in your face as and whimsical as I was expecting them to try. But if you take a step back, it's like, well, DC has tried that in Doom Patrol and the Arrowverse, so maybe, having something like this where it feels more in line with the tone of the film, well, okay. And Lady Gaga, you have her as this universe's version of Harley Quinn, referred to as Lee. I think her full name is Harleen Lee Quinzel. And the relationship is different from the typical Joker Harley relationship we get, where the Joker is super manipulative and slapping Harley. The relationship is different, but it's still clearly painted as being unhealthy the way that it's presented here. So it's the dynamic is different, but it's still an unhealthy relationship. She worships the idea of Joker, and so do other people around this Gotham. So that brings me to the point of this film. It feels like this film is trying to call out the the toxic fan base, the edge lords of the internet. Anyone who would idolize a Joker or Joker like person, and use the character and their and what they're like as an excuse to support those sorts of things that we really shouldn't. And I think the film, the first one, was trying to make a point that the Joker is not someone to be idolized, but it still feels like, people view that first film, and it feels like all that the Joker or Arthur Fleck is doing is glamorized. So I guess you could debate whether there's whether there's a flaw in the intentionality and conveying the intentionality, or I think that's the intentionality. I'm just saying like what I got out of these. Um, or you could say, maybe it's a media literacy thing and people should know right from wrong. But this second film, if there was that intention of showing that this behavior is not right, then the second film doubles down on that. It doubles down on Joker being, this idea being a fantasy that people should not be trying to live through. And the second half of the film is a courtroom drama, basically. And I knew that aspect going in. Um, and there were moments in the film where, I watched this late and I was zoning out a little bit during a couple parts. So later on, when reading up on what people disliked about the film, um, it sort of it showed me like, okay, what are the cracks? What are the things that people really dislike? And yeah, well, there are things in the film that um, made me think, because the message of the film, or what I perceive as a message of the film, the anti toxicity message, that was in the forefront for much of the film to me. And so that kind of gave me 8 out of 10 energy. But the more I think about the other stuff, the more I wonder, well, is it 7, 7.5? And I don't know. This could go down score wise, but I think there are other things that are more in line with like the 2 out of 10 or whatever scores that people are throwing out there. But yeah, there is something that happens, I think, before the closing statement that is unsettling and did not need to be in the film, really. I think it's to highlight the how corrupt the prison system can be, but I think you can do that without um, the particular element that they included. But getting to the closing statement, well, I guess I'll like go into spoilers here. So there's the moment where Arthur says there is no Joker, and he says that he is just Arthur Fleck, and so really shooting down that idea of the fantasy. And yeah, that could have happened without some of the things that happened before in the film. And then there's a car bomb that some Joker fanatics um, end up uh, what they blow up the courthouse uh, and get Arthur in the car, and they're fans of him, and you see how uncomfortable he is around them, even though they are fans of his. And even when he escapes them, they're like, "We still love you, Joker," and it's like this really uncomfortable thing that you see in fandom where certain people worship certain creators that they think have the exact same beliefs as them, but the creator in reality might not like these fans who take things to extreme. And because Arthur has uh, said there is no Joker, Harley or Lee, I can never get used to that. She leaves him as like it's just a fantasy. It feels kind of Twin Peaks in a way, the return to reality. The this all feels like a dream and now it's reality type thing. It shows the consequences of um, you know some of these things that happen. And people had been talking up the ending, saying, "Oh, the ending is whack," and so I was really expecting something really out there, like, "Oh, is this thing gonna happen to Harley, or is there gonna be like a kid Batman or something who takes on Joker?" But no, Arthur gets stabbed in prison after the guy stabs him, tries telling a joke. And so when that happened, I was like, "Oh, okay. I guess I that feels in line with what one might expect." Um, but I guess maybe people dislike the part of why they dislike the ending could be that some were picturing Arthur would become like the actual Joker as opposed to maybe he inspires a Joker, but it does have its flaws. Um, there were certain things I did take away from it, the anti toxicity thing. At least that's how the film feels. Um, but yeah, I'm still a little confused about the super, super, super low scores. And it's fine. People um they take in films, and it's just how they feel. I do wonder if maybe in several years certain elements of this film might be reevaluated and be seen as something worth saying, or if it'll just remain with the reputation of one of the worst DC films or whatever. But it is a fascinating case study how, like, the first Joker film was a film that lots of people enjoyed and thought really did not need a sequel. Well, some people thought so anyway, and those people kind of got what they wanted. There was a sequel, but it did not franchise the film. I doubt that this particular world, this Earth that those Joker films are on, is gonna continue. And Todd Phillips has cemented that he will not be making any more Joker films, and I don't think there will be any more, especially not after this one. So this kind of accomplished that mission of making sure that there's no more of this Joker world that certain people did not want the first one to they kind of wanted the first one to stand on its own, and now you get this one which ensures that there's not too much of this world. It's kind of just there in its own little corner. But yeah, that's pretty much all the thoughts I have on the film. Again, it's an interesting case study, at least. um, and it does make me think. And yeah, I don't know. So if people Did not enjoy this film. Maybe they'll enjoy the Penguin TV show on Max, which shows the rise of, um, the Penguin from the Batman, the Robert Pattinson Batman, played by Colin Farrell. Once again, it's 3 episodes in, and it's pretty good so far. So yeah, go check that out. Maybe that's more your speed. But yeah, so that's all my thoughts on Joker Folie Deux. And thanks for tuning in to Steven Shinder Reviews in video form, and see you all next time.